Welcome to the Uncommon Area, where we're dedicated to reimagining HOAs. We provide board members and managers with the resources to create uncommon communities where residents love their HOA and truly love where they live. Welcome to the Uncommon Area. I'm Matthew Holbrook, and this episode is all about communication in HOAs. And joining me to talk about that is Julie Adamen. And Julie has been around in this industry for a little while and leads Adamen Inc. And Julie, thank you so much for joining us and being part of this. Tell us a little bit about just what is it that you do with Adamen Inc.?
Oh, well, what do? I do all kinds of things, but we do, the main things we do is executive recruiting. So that would be on-site managers and management company executives. As you know, Matthew, many, many years ago, we used to do portfolio folks and that stuff. Not those people find their own jobs now because the internet did not exist when we started this, or it did, but it was very rudimentary.
Yeah.
So executives, and we do online education for managers and board members as well. And I do all kinds of consulting work, expert witness work, that type of thing.
Great. So you have kind of a bird's eye view of what's going on in the HOA world, and you have for quite a while now. And we want to talk today about communication. You recently published an article about communication in HOAs. We'll link to that article here for this episode. But talk to me for just a minute. What brought you to even wanting to write an article on that subject? Why is that important?
Almost everything boils down to communication in homeowners associations. How to do it well, how to keep it up, being consistent, and without it, as you know, HOAs have rotating board members, so you have volunteers that want to do something one time, then they leave, and then it all just falls apart. And one of the best things they can do is keep that ball rolling of communication, and also be really aware of what is important to your homeowners. And you talked about the article I wrote. Well, that was based on, as you know, a survey that came out from frontdoor.com, and it had some really eye-opening statistics in it. And as you said earlier, everybody says they hate their HOA. They hate their HOA, or they don't want to be in an HOA. And statistically, that proved out in this survey. 70% of people surveyed said they would not live in an HOA if they had to do it again or could move elsewhere. Now, I always think there's they like their HOA for some stuff. They like the fact that people are supposed to keep their yards up and that type of thing. But their biggest problems is that, number one, they think it costs too much to live in an HOA. The dues are too high. Number two, they think the dues are not being well spent. And number three, they think the board doesn't communicate enough or communicate well. All three of those things are tied together. And if you add that in with what all of us, this country, the world, went through during COVID, and how that really changed people, and not necessarily for the better. It's been very difficult to find board members, to keep good board members, and it's all a part of this roiling ball. So I thought that I would write about that so we could address that head on as an industry. There's just no getting around it that people are nastier nowadays than they used to be. I think the number of lawsuits that are filed against HOAs by homeowners are much, much higher than they've ever been. So, and the lawyers tell me this. And so, yep, I know it's true in Arizona. It was true in Washington. I hear it from California people, everything. So it's pretty interesting stuff. But that's why I wrote it.
Yeah. Well, you had talked about kind of those three things that people don't like about HOAs, but it all comes back to communication. People don't understand how their dollars are being spent. People don't understand why the rules are important. And all of that leads to dissatisfaction, but it's functioning and flowing out of communication. I think it's also worth noting that, it's just going along with what you were just saying, the world is much more polarized and politicized than it was pre-COVID, and there is an overall just decrease in regular decency in people's interactions. People tend to be much more forthcoming and direct in what they want to say, and oftentimes not in helpful ways. There's more suspicion. All of that comes together. Yeah, absolutely. So all of that comes together in ways that that communication becomes more important than it ever has been, even though it always
Yes.
has been really important. One thing, this is not necessarily addressed in your article, but I was thinking about this, that there is the added baggage to communication these days in the fact that it seems that everyone brings certain assumptions to the table and how they hear everything. And those levels of assumptions and those predetermined narratives that they have in their own minds shapes what they're actually hearing. So you can have different people that hear the same message, but hear completely different messages. And I think that is, I'm not sure what the psychological and sociological reasons are for this, but I think it's somewhat related to the advent of the internet, in that there's so much information coming our way and everybody has different pieces of that information, and it shapes those narratives, it shapes those assumptions, and then causes each of us to hear in different ways. So I think that that's a challenge with the communication.
Yeah, I think that's a human thing. I really, the old kids game telephone, you whisper and then it gets to something different. I think that's always been the case. But I believe that our national PTSD we're all suffering from COVID, and I really do think it's a form of PTSD. I think that's just exacerbates that issue because, and also people are so inundated with information. Everybody carries all the knowledge of the world in their pocket with their phone, right? And you can doom scroll right through it and see everything you want to see and hear everything you want to hear, but you're just getting snippets, and you start processing in just snippets. Whether it's off your phone or you're on Facebook or whatever you're doing, your HOA just blends right into that. Well, I read a little bit of what they said, and I already think that they're doing something wrong. So that's why I think that we as leaders in the industry, but board members in particular, need to be very aware that no matter what they tell people, and even if they're trying to do their best, people are going to hear it differently. And that's where consistency and the number of times per month or, per year that they communicate with their homeowners in, whether it's newsletters, website, town halls, depending on what's going on. Maybe they really need to have an in-person chat with folks or whatever it is. In my opinion, it's a semi-pronged approach. One size is not going to fit every situation for any community. And I know it's asking a lot of board members. Believe I sat on 2 boards at once when I was living in Washington State. I don't know what I was thinking, but I did. And, I see it. I see it from the board members aspect, and I see it from the homeowners aspect. And of course, I see it from the management aspect of managing the community as a manager. Not that I was managing it, but I see what they see in it. And then from the homeowners, I am a homeowner right now. I live in a ginormous over 55 community. And we have so much communication that comes out of our HOA that some people even complain about it. Well, I get too many emails. So I'm thinking, no, you don't. You get just about the right amount. You probably could use more if you'd read them. So anyway, and the way and the type of communication that you give your owners and will help, not totally, determine how they receive that communication.
So what do you see as the deficiency in communication for most associations, or what's the most common place that a board falls down and is not communicating adequately?
Well, other than not communicating at all, which it happens. I mean, it happens terribly. Is it communicate the type of information that will enlighten your residents? So back to the survey, if those residents feel like the dues are too high, you need to explain to them in a way that they can process why the dues are what they are. There's a lot of different ways to do that, but everybody's assessments have gone up in the last couple of years. I mean, there are some really big hot button issues. Insurance, we can talk about that one, right? Using that as a good example. And when homeowners, and especially if you're especially if your community is one that has working families, two parents, both out there working, they may have kids, they're too busy to read 7 paragraphs about why the dues are going up. So how would you address that? Well, you might have to address it 3 or 4 or 5 different times before the budget comes into effect. And maybe you do need to hold a board member chat. I worked with an association out down in the Palm Springs area for about 9 months. Their board actually held board member chats every Saturday morning, and 1 or 2 board members would show up and just sit there and answer questions. And after about 3 months, and boy, God love those people because it was difficult. There were some nasty homeowners in there. But after about 3 months, that all kind of just settled down because they answered everybody's question. This kind of killed 2 birds with 1 stone. It answered everybody's question to the recall issue. These were the people they were trying to recall. But the other thing it did was it showed the owners that the board members were just owners like them, and they had the guts and the wherewithal to come out and talk to them and spend their Saturday morning just chatting, answering questions as best they could, and getting back to people when they didn't have the right answer. So if your assessments are going to go up and it's because of insurance, it's because of utilities, whatever it's going to be, explain that to people. Let them know that this is why, and go ahead and cite your resources. I mean, I put together a program on that very article, and one of the things about the utilities, I quoted the LA Times on that because that's an expert source. And, board members can often forget that if they're going to have a town hall for people to talk to them, say the whole board is there, or half the board is there, whatever it's going to be, if you need to bring your insurance agent in, they're typically more than happy to come right in and answer questions from your homeowners, or if your attorney needs to come, or any other expert. Say you're going to, have the roof replaced, and that's why we have to come in and we're going to raise assessments or do a special assessment. Have the roof consultant come in, the guy who said this is what you need to do, and let them answer questions. I think board members often feel like they're the Lone Rangers out there, and many times they are, but you don't have to be. And I think a lot of times they are because they just don't realize they have other people that they can lean on, the experts in the industry that they can lean on, whether it's, like I said, the roofer, landscaper, attorney, insurance agent, whatever it is. So you could do that type of thing. And then you can send out another another email with bullet points that people can grasp quickly because they're busy. Or another great way to present things like that, like the budget thing, so people see it in a glance, is either a graph or a pie chart. People can see at a glance that, oh my gosh, all our money isn't going to management, or it's not all going to here, it's going to insurance and landscape, or whatever it is. So people can grasp it quickly. I know it's going to take more work on the front end, but on the back end, you will be very happy that you did this. And the thing is, once you start it, you can't stop it. You have to keep communication up. So the assessment increase, that's behind us now. What's coming up? And at the same time that you're telling them stuff that may have a negative impact on the homeowners or a perceived negative impact, you report on the good things as well. I used to have a board member years and years ago who had a great saying. It was called spin the halo. So if you've done some great things or your committee members have done something great, go ahead and let people know that as well, whether it's your newsletter or e-blasts or whatever form of communication you have. I think it's always good to let people kind of know what the amenities actually are. This goes towards the 4 or 5 pools that we have, and this goes towards the landscape. And when you're mentioning those things in a newsletter, it often helps to have a nice picture of that pool that people love. And you could also, in a gentle way, in these types of communication, the average cost for installing a pool in a backyard and maintaining it, a private pool, well, it's much, much more than what they're paying towards pool maintenance per door. So I think pointing out, how much they would pay for these kind of amenities is a good thing. I mean, as you know, and as board members know, the people love to have the amenities that they really like, but they don't want to pay for it. Yeah. Well, that's human nature. And I think we can't not address that. I think we have to address that as well.
Yeah. Well, that's great. You gave a lot there. Let me try to summarize a little bit, kind of some bullet points here for takeaways. First of all, I think what you started off saying is that communication in HOAs is ultimately sales. You are selling an idea, and I think managers, board members would be well served if they thought about the budget or the financial situation or the roofing project or the rules and regulations from a sales standpoint. How do we sell this to our homeowners so that they buy in and that they see the value of that?
Absolutely. The sales aspect, I shy away from saying that because as soon as you say sales, people go, oh, I can't sell. That's the first thing they say. More of a marketing approach.
Yeah, it is. Right? It's marketing, it's sales, it's communicating to, we are all in sales 100% of the time in our lives. Whenever we are saying something to somebody else, we're selling them on our idea, even if it's just in a regular discussion. So we need to communicate ideas with that in mind, that we're trying to help people to understand so that they would believe in whatever it is that we're promoting. So I would say that's the first bullet point. The second part of that is what you got to at the end, is there's a need for celebrating. We're not just selling ideas, but we're also celebrating the good things and making a big deal from a celebration standpoint. The third point that I think that you've raised, and I'm going out of order of what you said just to try to organize this a little bit, but there's a value in providing comparisons. You were talking about this is what it would cost to do it on a private basis versus what it costs in an HOA, or I think there's lots of ways to draw in comparisons from outside of the community, whether it be in the industry or in home life in general, but we can bring in comparisons that I think help people to understand. Then you highlighted also the importance of experts. And I think that cannot be overstated. Managers and board members should not be in front of homeowners trying to communicate technical and specific ideas that are going on in the community, when you have access to the experts who are willing to be doing that for you. So lean into that. So we have experts. You talked about frequency of communication. I think that's something that everybody understands intuitively, but we need to really lean into the frequency. I've seen lots of data points where people don't actually hear and understand something until they've heard it 7 times. I don't know if that number is exactly right, but we need to communicate.
That's the first rule of marketing, 7 times in front of someone, and then they just see it. Doesn't mean they absorb it.
Absolutely. So there's frequency. And then there's a couple of points that you alluded to that might be worth spending a little bit more time on. And that the first one, you used the word focus. I might take what you were saying from the perspective of focus and make it and say, we need to provide information that can be also bite-sized. And so it leads into my last point, and I'm going to take both of these together. So there's bite-sized communication, but we have to have a variety of communication because there's some forms where we're going to provide communication in lengthy, full, detailed explanations. And then we have to be able to take small pieces of that and communicate it in bite-sized ways. I'm always interested in how different industries communicate and make sales. And in today's world, the days of going and buying a record or a CD is long gone, right? We stream music, but how does that streaming music get to people? It's not even usually on the radio. More times than not, it's actually through social media, and it's through some type of a reel that might be only 30 seconds or less, where you're hearing this bite-sized piece of the music, but it draws your attention to where you go to Spotify, you listen to that song, then maybe you go to a whole album, but you're drawing people in with those bite-sized pieces. I think that that's a really important part of communication in HOAs that's under-leveraged, is the value of bite-sized communication at high frequencies. And then the last one would be, that kind of flows out of that, is there needs to be a variety of communication. I thought for a minute, it might be worthwhile for you and I to maybe make a little bit of a list of different types of of communication that can be used in HOAs and talk about some values of that. But you've mentioned email, and you've mentioned community forums, town halls, board members going to a club room or a pool area and doing one-on-one communication, conversations as people have questions. What are the other forms of communication that you see as valuable for HOAs to consider?
Well, I see video definitely as one. And people may think that's a really difficult thing to do. It's not so difficult anymore. Again, everybody has one of these, right? So it's typically got a very high res camera, and you could put together either as a board member yourself or as board together talking about one thing, but I wouldn't make it any more than 5 minutes or so long and post them. I would definitely post them on my website. I would also put those links in if you have an e-newsletter you're doing, even if you're doing a regular snail mail newsletter, make sure those links are everywhere. You want to make the access to communication as open as the communication is. So one spot of putting links or, sending it out once is like, well, you got it once again, 7 times in front of someone and they see it. Now that's not to say you have to put the same 7 links out, not like, and 7 times. It's not like that. Yeah. But it does have to be consistent, and it may have to go out more than once, and it has to be readily available to any homeowner with internet access, which is everybody. So those types of things. And the communication we talked about town halls. We talked about single or 2 board member chats with homeowners. And, one more thing I will say for board members, especially yourselves, I know the role is difficult. I know you get paid a lot to do it, like as much as I did. Yeah. And, sometimes you just don't want to be bugged. You're on your way out to the mailbox and you got to go to work. And here up comes, Martha, and she wants to ask you about X, whatever it is. And I think we have to realize that you're always being looked at, you're always being watched, and you're always on as a board member. You are, as Matthew said, you are in sales, you are in marketing. I know that has a funny connotation, but you are. And it's the marketing of your gorgeous, beautiful community. And you want to help make it that way. So when someone approaches you, try and be accommodating, smile, shake their hands. You thank them for their input. And if you have to get back to them, make sure and do that. That's a huge part of that interpersonal communication. Talk about focused. That's interpersonal communication that you just can't get away from as a board member. I know it's difficult. You don't necessarily want to do it, but it's something you cannot ignore.
Yeah. That's I'd put that's just the human element. You have to be able to engage with humans in that role. You talked about video. I want to double click on that for a second. I think there's a lot of interesting opportunities for video usage in communities these days. I was talking to somebody recently who was referencing the new mayor in San Francisco, who is posting a 1-minute video on social media every day from a different place in the city saying, here's what's going on in the city today. Here are the things that we're working on. Just want you to know. That type of, you mentioned less than 5 minutes, but this is just like a 1-minute video from the mayor of the city saying, here's what we're doing for you today. Goes a long ways to filling in those gaps. Like, what is my city, or in our case, HOA, what are they doing for me today? And you build that repetition, and you begin to get credit for the things that are going well. And I think that's a really helpful thing.
Absolutely. And I love that idea. And you could take that even a little further than that. If you have in-house staff members, let's just say you have in-house landscape. I'm just going to use that because that's easy. And whoever is the lead on that, they might be very willing to take video and feature one of their people, or just say, this is what we're working on around pool area 2 today. And, once flowers beforehand, and then you take a quick short video of the empty beds, then afterwards, how beautiful it all looks. Yeah. I think it's a great thing. And that really, when you show things like that, it lets people know where their money's going. Yeah.
You're doing, you're selling them on the value of what you're providing. That goes back to the sales idea. You're creating that visual.
It's exactly right. And it's also educational. I mean, you're selling them on the value, but if yes, it's sales, no doubt.
Yeah.
However, you're telling them the truth.
Yeah.
Look what it looks like.
Yep.
Look what it looked like before. Here's what it looks like afterward. Having the streets slurried before and after, with a couple homeowners going, yeah, it's great. And then just, I think a minute video, I think that's really great. And there's a lot of people who would be willing to do that, I think, in the community as far as board members go nowadays. Because like I said, the video's right there. It's in your pocket. You can just take it out, do a video. You can edit it right on the phone and you can upload it to YouTube, to your own YouTube channel if you want. Pretty easy.
Yeah. And so that just takes us into, there's the whole value of use social media to your advantage. So some social media can be kind of a negative thing for HOAs, but if board members and if management companies and managers embrace social media, there's a positive communication there. Back on the videos, one thing that we've done in some of our communities is actually embedding a video into non-compliance notices. So somebody gets a notice telling them about, what they have to fix in their home, which nobody likes to receive. But then with that, there's a video from the manager saying, hey, we're sending you a non-compliance notice. You're not liking getting that. We don't love sending that to you, but here's why this is important. We're going to ask you, would you cooperate with us? We don't want to be picking on you. Let's work together to solve this. It just softens the message and makes things more palatable.
What's the reception on that?
It's been very positive. We take it a step further. In certain communities, we even do it in multiple languages. So you can click on a different link for different languages. And one of the things that makes things easier in the world today, and this scares some people, and it's a little bit scary, but it's also kind of cool.
AI.
But I can speak any language in the world now. Shoot a video of me, and you can, with AI, I could speak any language.
Yeah. I have it.
So it's game changing with our ability to connect with people and to be able to make certain messages more palatable. And I think that's really important, and that's part of getting people to buy in.
It's funny you should say this just so to let people know. You may think AI, it's really scary. Well, there's a lot of really good things about it, and one of these things is that if you I'm using a product called Synthesia. So it's synthesia.io, and you can go there and take a look at it. And they do avatars, and you can lease, or actually basically you're leasing their avatars, or you can do your own, which you keep. And those avatars can speak like 38 different languages with just a click. So people can, if you have a very multicultural association, it doesn't even have to be you. It can be an avatar. And it can give whatever information you want to give. Super easy to put up, relatively inexpensive for the value that it gives you. Have you heard of that, Matthew?
No, I haven't, but we'll go ahead and we'll link to that. And
you should take a look at it. Yeah, it's pretty
make that
astonishing.
Available. Yeah. No, that's great. And one other thing, while we're touching on the non-compliances, I see that as the opportunity to create people who really hate their HOA. Nobody likes getting a non-compliance notice. So I'm very focused on what can we do to still meet our obligations to maintain the HOA, but to get buy-in as opposed to, slapping somebody's hand over whatever is going on with their home. And, one of the ways I think that we can do that, we talked about messaging and doing that with videos and in different languages, but I think there's also an opportunity, going back to your point about celebration, to celebrate the homes in the community where they're doing something really well. Somebody who has a really well-maintained front yard. What if they received a notice, instead of it being a non-compliance, it was, hey, thank you for keeping your front yard maintained so well. You're contributing to everybody's property value in the community.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah,
I think that's a terrific idea.
It's all part of the communication. Are we only communicating the negative, or are we communicating in a way to really emphasize and recognize and celebrate the positive things that are going on in the community?
Yeah, exactly. And I think in the article I put something in there is if somebody's yard looks really great, take a picture of it and ask them if you can put it in the next newsletter, or the
absolutely.
next whatever email that goes out, and say, hey, the Smith's yard looked fantastic. We just want to take a picture and say, thank you. Everything looks great. So even people do love to be recognized, even if it's for their yard. They really do.
Yeah.
So I think that's a super idea of, doing the thank you letter as well. Of course, that's more work for management. So I don't know where you guys come down on that. But I think overall, even if the board members put just a thank you, just an old fashioned thank you note into their mailbox would work.
Yeah.
Wonders.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's different ways to do that. I can illustrate this in a couple of different ways. You talk about the more work. I think that when it comes to the work element of communication, we have to be looking at the ROI of the communication and be willing to make upfront investments. So one example I would give you, we had a community that was really struggling with non-compliances. It was about a 900 unit community. They had somewhere around 1,200 open violations ongoing for years at a time. They weren't the same violations, but it was just rotating through new violations, but it was on average 1,200. And we're looking at that and we're saying there's 1,200 opportunities for people to be mad at us. That's generating opportunities for people to call us, to be mad at us, to be mad at the board. And when they call and they're upset, these are not short conversations. So it's taxing on our resources to manage all of that, to send follow-up notices, to schedule hearings, to work with the board in facilitating those hearings, to send hearing result letters, to impose fines where needed. It's a lot of work to maintain 1,200 open violations. We said, hey, can we help with this? And so we did a blitz where we did actual phone calls to homeowners. And we made hundreds, if not thousands of phone calls to homeowners saying, hey, you've got a violation. We're sending you a notice. We're sorry that you're going to get that. If I was you, I wouldn't enjoy getting that notice. But I'm calling you to give you a heads up, and we're just asking, can we get some compliance? Because it's going to help your property value, it's going to help your neighbors, and it's going to be in everybody's best interest. And we had a really good script on how to do that, better than what I just said. And within a few months, we got the violations down to only a couple hundred violations. It took a lot of work on our part doing that on the front end. But in the long run, we saved ourselves a whole lot of work. So I would suggest doing some of that upfront work and getting people to feel valued and to be seen as humans makes things a lot easier actually in the long run and actually reduces work.
Just think of how much time you save the board in grief with people knocking on their doors and, coming into the board meeting with torches and pitchforks.
Yeah.
I mean, that truly is value added that you're providing. I mean, that literally is above and beyond. But I really love the out-of-box thinking on that. I really do.
The reality is everybody wins. The homeowner feels valued. The board gets homeowners that are more happy with their HOA, and the result for even the management company that in the long run our work went down. That's a value to the management company.
And talking about communication like that, I think. Matthew, you probably weren't in the business in the 80s. I don't think so.
No, I wasn't.
You're not as old as me. But so I started in this industry in the 80s when we had typewriters, people. When we would do violation letters, they weren't like the violation letters everybody uses now, which is and I get they have to do it. It's a form and you have to do this and it cites the CCNRs and everything has to be done. We wrote them ourselves as the managers and, typed them out. And it wasn't quite as legalistic. And I wonder that maybe sometimes the legalistic language that we have to use or we have a tendency to use as an industry, it kind of works against us in certain ways. I know we have to do it in some things, but I think maybe that more of a personal thing, not that everyone has to type it individually, but maybe the first notice letters could be slightly nicer.
Yeah, the language matters. And I think as we draw this episode to a conclusion, one of the things I would point to is, again, this idea of a variety of communication and bite-sized pieces. There's a way to leverage text messaging in today's world. There's a lot of platforms that allow for mass text messages. And some people are never going to read emails. I know my kids will never look at an email. But people will read text messages, and if we can give them bite-sized pieces of information and look at texting even as another vehicle, another way to communicate, we need to embrace all avenues of communication and give some full, detailed explanations and some bite-sized pieces and put it all together and look for ways to make the sale, to celebrate, and to get the message to the people in the community.
I couldn't agree with you more on that. I think every avenue needs to be looked at, and leveraging the different AI platforms there's no excuse that for board members that, I can't write. Well, it can write for you. It's pretty easy.
Yeah, it is.
I really like all of it. And communication is everything. Consistency is right up there with communication. You communicate once, but if you don't do it for 6 more months,
no value.
You've lost an opportunity.
Yep. Well, Julie, thank you so much. Really appreciate you being part of this. It's good to catch up, and really appreciate your contributions to the industry as a whole. And that's a wrap on this episode of The Uncommon Area. If you know anyone who might find this episode helpful, it would be great if you could share it with them. And if this podcast is helpful for you, we would really appreciate it if you would rate it and leave a review. That helps us to grow and to get the word out. So thanks for tuning in, and look for more episodes of The Uncommon Area.